Hey, fellow writers, how can you use the challenges in your life to your advantage in your writing? That's today's question I'm going to be talking about for the next 10 minutes. Hey, everyone, it's Sam with another Friday writing video for you. Hope everyone's doing well. It's Friday in the middle of April. Yeah, not a lot of updates on my end right now as far as personal writing projects. I've been trying to finish, at least come to a good stopping point of this project I'm doing for my church because I had at least a soft deadline for the end of April. Now I'm not going to finish the whole thing. The person in charge who I'm doing this for, one of our elders, gave me kind of the whole year ish to finish the whole account of the church's history. I'm hoping to have one chapter finished in April because we're doing a celebration, an anniversary celebration for the church next, not this coming Sunday, but next Sunday. So that's been kind of taking up a lot of my time. As far as writing, I do want to still work on my fiction projects too and get that to querying sometime soon. So I will give you updates when that happens and as I hear that going along too. But I think after April it'll slow down a little bit. Still not, I'll still have my hands full of stuff, but that's okay. I kind of like that way. I enjoy doing, I enjoy getting to write and do these side projects and things like that. It's that's why I do that with my time. Anyway, okay, back to the topic. Challenges in your life. How can they help your writing? Okay. Last week, if you heard my video last week, I mentioned I was going to a writers conference. I was able to attend virtually. I didn't actually go anywhere. It's this conference called HopeWords that takes place in Bluefield, West Virginia. And I always miss, or I always wish I could go in person because I'm from Virginia, and I miss the East Coast. I live in Texas now, of course, because I'm from my work. But I kind of miss the East Coast and wish I could go out that way again. Maybe one of these years I'll go in person. But I was able to attend the HopeWords conference, and they always have a good lineup of speakers telling about just their experiences in writing, some big name authors. I think well the biggest name I had heard of this year was Jackie Hill Perry. Check out her stuff if you haven't already, or just Google the Hope Words Conference in Bluefield, West Virginia, and figure out that, and maybe you can see who's going to be there for next year and such. I heard a couple different authors there speak to this theme, well, in slightly different ways, and I'll try to summarize what they said a little bit, or at least give you a few pointers that I took away from inspiration. Um, I'll try to say, but a couple of different speakers spoke about this topic of like using challenges to kind of fuel your writing, or to kind of actually help rather than hinder your writing. And I'll just go ahead and say I said this about a book I read a few months ago. Sometimes there are times when I feel inspired, but like I don't know necessarily how to practically use that. Like I think I read one of Andrew Peterson's books a few months ago, and actually Andrew Peterson has spoken at this conference before, I believe, um, or maybe not. Maybe I'm mixing them up because I've also watched him online through Rabbit Room Online. Anyway, but I read one of his books a few months ago, Adorn in the Dark, and it said, this is a book about writing and creativity, but it's very high level, meaning he's dealing with like the inspiration for writing, and like he's dealing with kind of maybe the philosophical, spiritual, universal reading for writing. What it's not is a practical how to, like, here's 5 ways to apply this to your writing, and here's five tips you can implement in writing. So and there's benefits to both approaches. I mean, I can like practical stuff that gives you concrete tips to implement, but I also see the need and very much appreciate the high level spiritual and universal kind of writing stuff. So I mean, sometimes I come away from these things feeling inspired, like, yeah, all these great talks make me want to write, and then I don't know how to practically implement them. So I'm still working on that too. But I will just so I'll just give you the caveat, since some of this stuff sounds really good, and I'm not quite sure where to go from there. But I hope on our journey, I and you will figure out how to implement these things. So anyway, I prefaced for about a few minutes. Um, so two authors from that conference that I want to highlight, and I'll also confess as a bad reader, I haven't actually read these authors yet. There has been some speakers there in previous years who have read, but I would like to. I just there's, as you guys know, so much to read. You guys have big TBR piles too. But I've heard them speak at the conference for a few years now, and I like what I hear. So the first one's Hannah Anderson. I've been hearing good things from her, hearing her say good things. and she talked about how kind of how we use necessity in our writing, meaning, all of us would say, I'm sure most of us, I mean, maybe you're the one lucky person out there with an exception. Most of us would say we don't have enough time to write, or if we do have the time, we don't have either motivation or energy or creativity or something like that. I mean, and again, there are exceptions. When I interview authors on here, which I do about once a month, I try to ask them, like, what are your biggest challenges? How do you find the time to write? Most people say it's challenging. I've had a few people who are like retired, or maybe their husband works full time or something like that, and they say time isn't an issue for them. I have had that, and I'm always a little jealous. And Hannah Anderson talked about like the famous authors, like a few of them who like married someone wealthy, and they were able to freed up to write to do their writing. And like Harper Lee, how her friends like gifted her a year's salary so she could pursue a wedding, and that's pretty great. Most of us are not in that boat, so most of us are writing in the midst of other commitments, other busyness of life. I am too. Um, we feel like we don't have the time and or motivation or energy. Here's something Hannah Anderson said that I wrote down, and she said, "The right disposition toward necessity can fuel creativity." Okay, the right disposition toward necessity can fuel creativity. So basically, she was talking about how instead of using these hindrances, these things that we feel like are needs, instead of letting them hinder us, how can we use them to actually our advantage, to help us? So, if you feel like you don't have time to write, use the little time you do have. If you feel like you don't have inspiration or whatever, write about that. Write about the challenges you're facing. I'm sorry, Hannah Anderson said it way better than I could, and I probably watched it a week ago now. But she had some good points, and I don't know, it made me feel like this is good stuff. This is like what I want to do. So, I've heard other authors speak about how kind of like when you're so busy, like I am, and probably most of us are, it forces you to prioritize your time. My time is pretty structured now. Like so I'm less and less am I doing things like just you know browsing social media aimlessly or playing games on my phone aimlessly, um, because the time I do have for free time I want to use for my project and such. So I'm utilizing my time. So rather than and people often talk about how challenges are not just a challenge, or what seems like a hindrance can be turned into an opportunity in times of crisis. So I'd encourage you that way. Use your necessity as a fuel for your writing rather than as a hindrance. Another author at the conference said something kind of similar. He was Dr. Lewis Brogdon. Who said he wasn't talking about so much about the challenges in your life, like the most of us are facing, like time management and stuff. He was talking about authors who were like actually going through times of turmoil, like Martin Luther King writing the letter from Birmingham jail in jail, or even the Apostle Paul writing some of his best letters from jail, and these writers who have used times of turmoil to spur them on, and how that can sometimes give us some of the best inspiration in writing. Most of us are not in times of turmoil. Hopefully, maybe you are. I don't know your situation. Maybe there's family crisis for you, or something like that. All of us kind of are witnessing a big time of crisis for the nation and the world. Even if we're not directly involved. My life has felt semi-normal compared to world events. They haven't directly affected me that much, but there's been stuff going on. We all lived through COVID. We've all had some some trauma, some crisis in the last few years. Um, yeah, so you can, I don't know, use those things to inspire writing, and of course, the hope is to inspire writing that gives hope even in the midst of circumstances, even in the midst of turmoil and such. I know in English class in high school we would joke about how I think it was 10th grade particularly, all the books we read were depressing, and it's like, well, most of these writers probably didn't have necessarily a happy life. Just think about, I don't know, Edgar Allan Poe, maybe Mark Twain, F. Scott Fitzgerald. Even he lived in luxury, but he was realizing a lot of the disillusionment and the downsides that came with that. He was with living above his means. A lot of these authors didn't have necessarily happy lives. Some of them had great crisis and trauma, and that's what's inspired the great stories, the great works of literature that we're still reading and talking about today. So I'm not saying I wish crisis or trauma on any of you. Certainly I don't. But when you have it, and again, I'm kind of using the lowball definition here. I mean, hopefully you're not in jail, suffering for a cause. But we have lived through some hard things in the last few years, and you have your perspective. You have a perspective on that is real and that has affected your development, I'm sure, and that possibly is a story worth telling. So, just the encouragement, inspiration there is use the challenges, use the hardships to not just to not hinder you from writing, but to fuel your writing. I mean, and again, so that goes for challenges in your personal life, like time management and such like that, but also challenges in the world, like big, big world stage circumstances that are stressful and problems, challenges, those kind of challenges too. So okay, that's the big message for today. Use these challenges of various kinds to not hinder your writing, but fuel your writing, and see where that takes you, and hopefully that gives you some inspiration. So again, those authors, check them out. It's Hannah Anderson and Dr. Lewis Brogdon. And again, they said it all way better than I could have. I'm trying to summarize these in just a few minutes, but hope that speaks to someone today. Hope it helps you, and I hope you keep writing and have a great weekend. And keep writing words that bring hope too. Thank you, everyone. Bye.